Kickoff Week 18 of the National Football League in Dallas at 12-4 on the road to close out the regular season today, taking on the 7-8-1 Washington Commanders. And if you made the extra effort to go to Twitch, YouTube, or Facebook to check us out, we can't thank you enough. Right now on the airwaves of 1310 and 96.7, we have Dallas Stars hockey as they're playing right next door at the AAC against the Florida Panthers. And we got a 3:25 kick today on Fox. And I guess we're going to be scoreboard watching quite a bit today as the Giants are not starting Daniel Jones at quarterback today, but the Eagles are starting Jalen Hurts, who's been injured. And all eyes will be there as well as what happens at FedEx Field.
Yeah, and Dallas can only control what's in front of them in their game, obviously. And as the Cowboy fans, we just would like them to get in and out, win the game, and hopefully not add to any significant injuries along the way. Mm-hmm. But for the Eagles have really been struggling as of late, really at the wrong time of year. And obviously getting Jalen Hurts back is really going to help them. They're going to try to get things sorted out so they can get going. But it would be nice if Dallas were able to somehow hold on and find a way to win the division. You don't have a chance to win this many games and finish second in your division.
I know,
but
it is rare.
It is really also a tip of the cap to Mike McCarthy and his staff. For the first time in a very long time, the Cowboys having back-to-back double-digit win seasons. Mm-hmm. And that is, I don't think that's something that we should discount when you factor in how many games Dak missed. I think it really talks to the overall talent level of this team. They might not be the most talented team, but they definitely have a good thing going on right now.
And it's a wide open NFC. We
Sure
should also note that the NFC East has not been won by a team in consecutive years since the 2005 season. So it's been a while. The Cowboys would need a lot to happen for them to do that. Before we get into all the playoff scenarios, before we get into narratives, before we talk about this game against a Washington team that's been eliminated, we do need to address the biggest news story in the NFL this week. That, of course, Damar Hamlin. Monday night, Bills and Cincinnati Bengals. He went down on what looked like a normal football play, but he had cardiac arrest. And the fact, and I'm sure many tuning in know, he's doing better. Still in critical condition, but was able to address his team via Zoom or whatever yesterday. He's been tweeting out messages. He's no longer on a breathing tube, and he's neurologically intact. And I don't know how you feel about it, but watching that Monday night, it sort of took me back to 2014 with Rich Peverly when he had the cardiac event on the
I was watching
Stars
that game
bench.
too.
Yeah, me too. And it just had that same eerie vibe. Kudos to Troy Aikman, Joe Buck, Lisa Salters, Scott Van Pelt, everybody in the studio. The way ESPN handled that from a coverage standpoint, I thought was impeccable. But the biggest kudos goes to the training staff and the doctors that were able to save the life of Damar Hamlin. And it's been so cool to see the NFL world and the football world show love for number 3.
Yeah, if you go to the donation site for his GoFundMe page that he set up when he was in college, and you look at who has donated, and you see the list of players and coaches, front offices, and teams, it is a who's who of the NFL, and it goes to show you how much it impacted everyone. I was watching it live when it happened, and I knew right away that this was bad and that something was off.
Yeah.
I also saw the Christian Eriksen injury in the European Championship in soccer, which was a year and a half ago.
He had to get the paddles on the field. Yeah.
Thing.
Wow.
And his teammates formed a circle around him. His wife and kids were in the stands in that game.
Wow.
Fortunately, they were prepared in that situation. They ended up playing that game later on that day, an hour later, which is unbelievable.
That's
and
unthinkable.
Christian Eriksen is back playing.
I know, at a high level.
Yeah, for Manchester United. And the fact that that's even in the cards for Damar Hamlin is something pretty remarkable because the medical staff said that, you know what, the best case scenario is that he's back to his normal self.
I know.
That is amazing.
It really is a miracle. And just seeing every little drip of good news along the way has been, I think, uplifting for everybody. And, the Bills and the Bengals both in action right now, both leading their games. To have the positive news that they had throughout the week probably had to lift them and get them into a mental frame of getting back to NFL action right before the postseason. That had to be very difficult. But, it's the story that's dominated sports this week. It's dominated the news, and we would be remiss if we didn't touch on it off the top. But the Cowboys have things to play for, and there's a whole, I don't know if you can see this, there's a whole front and back thing I printed off of scenarios. And I guess the most pie in the sky is them getting the 1 seed. Dallas would have to beat the Commanders today, which that's a place they've had no problems winning in recent years,
Right.
especially under Dak. FedEx Field is not a big home field advantage for the Commanders at all. So if you're going to a place where you think you can win, Washington is that. Philadelphia would have to lose to the Giants. That might be tough because Davis Webb is starting. I know Brian Daboll said all the right things about, we're going to play our guys. Vegas knew something pretty early on because the spread ballooned up to, I think, 14.
Right.
Maybe over 2 touchdowns. I'm not sure where it is this morning. But, it's hard to believe that Philadelphia is going to lose to a Giants team today, but weirder things have happened, I guess. You would need San Francisco to lose to the Cardinals in J.J. Watt's final game for Arizona, final game of his Hall of Fame career. So that would give the Cowboys the 1 seed. The Cowboys would be the 2 seed if, again, they beat Washington, Philly loses, San Fran beats Arizona, then the Niners would be the 1 seed. I think they've won 9 in a row. You feel like that's going to happen today because they have a young, inexperienced quarterback in Brock Purdy. They're probably going to play their normal complement of players and try to execute best they can. But chances are, even if the Cowboys win and Philly wins, they're going to be the 5 seed. They're going to be taking on Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And what we're seeing, in fact, David Moore is going to join us later in the show. He tweeted last night that all signs point to a Monday Night Football primetime game with Dak and the Cowboys visiting Tom Brady and the Bucs. And as much as I don't want to have a Monday night game, I would rather get it done over the weekend. That would still be kind of cool.
Yeah, it would be kind of cool, but I really don't like that for the Cowboys or any of the teams. I don't like the fact that they're doing a Monday night game
short week
just
in the
because of the
playoffs?
short week the following
What are we
week. I
doing?
think that's at a disadvantage, and I think it's kind of sorry. And it just shows you, obviously, they could talk about player safety all they want, especially, and it's really sad that we're even having this conversation on the heels of the DeMar Hamlin situation.
Mm-hmm.
But to play these games on decreasingly amount of rest time, I just think it's ludicrous.
It really is.
Especially this late in the year.
And, of course, the Cowboys have their own injury issues they're dealing with in Week 18. Obviously, priority 1 is just stay healthy heading into the postseason. You're not going to see Tyler Biadasz at center today. I'm guessing you're going to see Connor McGovern. I haven't seen anything official on him yet, but he is not listed among the inactives. He came down with an illness late in the week, didn't practice on Friday. He was questionable heading to this one along with Kevontae Turpin. I'm very curious how the Cowboys' offensive line is going to shake out. And as I talked to Donnie on Friday during the show, 10 to noon, there's a few things I am actually looking forward to in this game. One is how this reworked offensive line does and how it will hopefully open up the running game, which has been kind of stalled out here recently. And on the back end in the secondary, these are young corners that need all the reps they can get. And if Washington plays their regular starters, that could be a decent test heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, because Washington, say what you will, they have wide receivers. I mean, they have talent at that position.
Ron Dotson, Scary Terry. They've got
and
dudes that
Curtis
can,
Samuel. They got guys
absolutely.
that you would say playoff caliber talent at those levels. And I mean,
week 1 or game 1 of the playoffs, probably the Bucs. You got Godwin. You got Evans, who's just been,
on fire last week.
Tear right now.
Yeah, so that would help get you ready for a similar type of offense and what you would see out of the Bucs. Granted, the Tampa Bay receivers are much larger than the Washington receivers. The Washington receivers, believe it or not, actually will probably be harder to cover just because they're quicker and they're better. That's what they do. That's their game. Their quickness is creating separation, whereas the Tampa receivers are going to be big bodies, maybe post up a little bit. Well, I say Godwin is a complete receiver to me when it comes to just route trees, slot guy, inside, outside. He can do it all. But that would be a good matchup for the Cowboys to today can do that if Sam Howell, who's playing quarterback, is actually going to be able to replicate anything that Tom Brady does.
I'd like to spend a minute on Sam Howell. And by the way, the fact he's starting today, Ron Rivera knows his team is eliminated this week. Yep. Unlike last week when he started Carson Wentz, he throws 3 interceptions. They lose to the Browns. And afterwards, when being asked by a reporter, I'm sure you've heard the audio by now. We definitely played it on the station this week. Ron Rivera seemed bewildered that if Green Bay won last week, that his team would be eliminated. And I'm just trying to play the hypothetical game. What if that was the Cowboys situation? And what if Mike McCarthy rolled that out? We would be beside ourselves. We would be calling for his job.
Yeah, because how are you not How are you so unaware of the playoff scenario?
Or just your staff.
Right.
I mean, I could understand maybe being so focused on the game plan.
Who's he talking to?
Yeah, like you would imagine your coaching staff would be breaking down every possible scenario.
Right.
It's just it was unimaginable to see him and that happen in a press
Yeah,
conference.
it really was.
But, the Cowboys are facing a team that has nothing to play for. Cowboys have things to play for. But Sam Howell, I don't think it's just going to be this layup. Not to say he's going to, replicate what Josh Dobbs did in his first start last week for Tennessee, but maybe you could see some moments where Sam Howell's arm talent shows up because, one, it's a secondary that we have some questions about. And if you go back to his North Carolina days or even the time he played in the preseason, I watched a good film breakdown today on his handful of preseason action. He has throws that can beat cover two. He can make every throw as most NFL quarterbacks can. And, there's things in his footwork. There's things as far as, like, how he maneuvers in the pocket. There's, how he's going to handle the blitz. Those are all question marks. But if he has a clean pocket and this Cowboys pass rush, which has, dwindled in recent weeks, there might be a time or two, especially with those receivers, he could make this secondary pay.
Well, I think what makes him so dangerous is the young legs. He's a good athlete. You have to remember that when Sam Howell, going into his final season at North Carolina, was in talks for 1-1. Like, first-round pick, first quarterback taken. There are a lot of people that he had a tremendous junior year. I want to say that junior year team had the running backs that and wide receivers, De'Ami Brown, who plays his teammate right now, Carter, and the other running back for the Broncos right now, Devontae Williams, and other receivers. So they had a ton of talent, and he was able to really be the straw that stirred that drink. But when all those guys left, and then his senior year, he was a guy that looked like he tried to do too much.
Yeah.
He tried to win the Heisman on every throw and try to, was trying to make the perfect play.
And a lot of those ACC games turned into shootouts.
Yeah.
I remember the one they had against Wake Forest. That really jumps to mind. And, sometimes when your defense gives up a ton of yards, you feel like you have to do everything yourself.
That is true. And I know that one of the things to me that makes him scary, and this was kind of reflected last week with Dobbs, was that when you don't have game tape and you don't know what type of offense they're going to call, their tendencies or anything like that, it's just really hard to take something away. So it's just going to, as a defense, you're going to have a very vanilla game plan.
Yeah, and who knows what kind of game plan Washington's going to have, because I'm sure that
But they want to see, so they're going to put something tailored to him.
I would imagine. I mean, again, it's probably not a broad playbook, but there's enough that there's going to be some unknowns for Dan Quinn and company. Speaking of the secondary, I love the news of adding Xavier Rhodes to the practice squad. I don't know if he's going to be needed next week, but having a guy that is a former Pro Bowler, a guy that's been around the league, and is he what he used to be? No. That's why he was available. But that's a pretty good safety net for a secondary that right now is rolling with Deron Bland at corner, and Kelvin Joseph is not starting. I mean, you've got Nashawn Wright, who has been sort of a mixed bag in his exposure to regular playing time. So I love the fact that they were smart enough to go find that guy.
Well, he only became available this week from the Bills,
right.
And that was pretty big, because I don't know if they could have found a better player this late in the game that also has experience with this defense, because he played for George Edwards, the Cowboys defensive backs coach, who is very, he's familiar enough that you feel like if he were thrust into action, that he would at least be able to get through a game, because he knows the calls, he's going to know the alerts, and he's going to feel somewhat comfortable.
And sight unseen, as a Cowboy, you might trust him more than Nashawn Wright or Deron Bland on the outside at the moment.
You could.
So we'll see. TBD there. Also, earlier this week, speaking of the roster, they released James Washington, which I guess wasn't a huge surprise. Once they went and got T.Y. Hilton, Washington's playing time was so limited. I don't believe he was a special teamer. So hopefully he can land on his feet somewhere, because he still has some NFL life in front of him. But this was not a big surprise, because they had to clear up a roster spot.
Right. You're right. It wasn't a surprise, and I feel sorry for him, because injuries happened, and it just never got started here in Dallas, and therefore he left. But if the consolation for that is T.Y. Hilton, and I think T.Y. Hilton has been a true blessing for this team. He's added a wrinkle that they did not have on this roster,
Sure.
and now he's a threat that he can take the top off, but he's also just that guy that can pick up 1 or 2 catches on third down that you trust.
Well, and depending on how things go today with Philly and New York, maybe you see the most T.Y. Hilton we've seen as a Cowboy, because ideally you would want to maybe get CeeDee Lamb off the field. Obviously, you can roll out Noah Brown, but it is still an NFL game, and somebody's going to have to play. You can't sit everybody.
Right.
And I know T.Y. Hilton's been getting 12 to 20 snaps per game. I would maybe like to see how he does, what kind of juice he has left in the tank as far as getting 30, 40, maybe even 50 snaps, depending on the circumstance.
Yeah, because if he's called into action, they're going to definitely need him to go. But, he had a couple of nice plays last week. He converted 2 first downs. And on third down, he kept those drives alive, and that's exactly how I could see his role playing out for the Cowboys.
And I know Washington is, they're resting a bunch of their regular guys. Jonathan Allen's not going to play today. They had a bunch of dudes on the injury report this week that didn't practice. They have nothing to play for. It's still a defensive front that you do have to worry about, and I know that this game doesn't mean much to Washington, but if they play just even a number of their regular defensive linemen, that's a good test for a reworked offensive line. I'm curious to see what Connor McGovern has as far as calling out protections at the center spot today. I know he's had very limited action there. I think Farniok is now, they opened up his 21-day window, so he could eventually be back as far as the offensive line goes. But, they've had to rework and shuffle dudes around, and I think today could be a test. And obviously we'll be paying attention to the Philly-New York score, because the last thing you want is Dak Prescott to go down with any kind of bumper bruise heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, I would be really concerned about how many snaps I exposed Dak to today because of that reworked offensive line. All it takes is one play. That's all that happened against Tampa Bay when he hurt his hand originally.
Against Tennessee last week in the first half, he went down and was grabbing his knee and was gimping around, and you're thinking, oh, my God.
Right.
This is horrible. But apparently Tyler Biadasz is going to be back for the playoffs. At least that's what they're saying. That's their hope. But still, I want to see Connor McGovern acquit himself well at the center spot, which is a place that he hasn't played just a whole lot. And I would like to see the ground game get back on track. You do have Tony Pollard back from his thigh issue today. He only needs 12 yards to get 1,000. I think Zeke, I forget the note. I think there's like 40 or 50 yards of all-purpose yardage to also have 1,000 all-purpose yards. So those are some benchmarks the Cowboys' backfield could look for.
Zeke is at 866 rushing. So, if he would have to really break off a long one, and I think that and his total yardage, if that's what you're looking for, he's at 958.
Yeah, he needs 42 scrimmage yards to get to 1,000 this year. So those are some carrots for the
Cowboys.
Cowboys.
They both have 12
backfield.
touchdowns.
And it would just be nice to see the Cowboys, I don't know, unlike the Houston game, unlike Tennessee last week when it was a one-score game in the fourth quarter, maybe just go out there, impose your will, and put one to bed early. I don't know. That's a lot easier said than done, especially in the National Football League. But there's some stuff off the top here on this abbreviated edition of Cowboys Countdown to Kickoff. Again, thanks to you, P1s, if you've made the extra effort to join us on Twitch, Facebook, or YouTube. Coming up next, let's make a phone call. Hopefully we'll connect with one David Moore with a stadium report as he joins us live from FedEx Field. We'll be back in a minute.
Cowboys football is a religion, and the ticket is the church. And we have services every day, not just Sundays. Get Cowboys hot sports opinions from legends Troy Aikman and Moose Johnston, experts Peter King, Tim Kalishaw, and David Moore. And the entire ticket team talks Cowboys every day. Commune with us at the altar of Cowboys. From the station that should probably go to confession. Maybe once. Sports Radio 96.7 and 1310. The NFL plays on the ticket. Dallas-Fort Worth's all sports all the time NFL sports station destination.
Frees him to the end zone for another Packer touchdown.
Tonight at 7:30 after our Cowboys postgame show, Dan Campbell's Lions try to spoil the Packers playoff
Sanders
party.
in the building. There's Jamal Williams. There it is. Number 15 on the season.
The NFL on the ticket is brought to you by Comerica Bank and Sports Radio 96.7 and 1310 The Ticket. This is Cowboys Countdown to Kickoff. Hot sports opinions on the Cowboys from Sean Bass, David Newbury, and the Ticket Guys. Brought to you by Miller Lite and Sports Radio 96.7 and 1310, The Ticket.
All right, 2:52 here on the Little Ticket, or the internet of the Ticket. We are streaming on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube today. Thank you so much for being with us on an abbreviated Cowboys Countdown to Kickoff. Week 18 of the NFL as Dallas takes on Washington at FedEx Field. And without further ado, let's go live to Landover, Maryland, and check in with our beat reporter of the Dallas Morning News and our very own ranch reporter. It is David Moore. Good afternoon, David. Do you read me? David, do you read me? Are we in program? That's always the question. David, you there? All right, let's go ahead and put him back on hold real quick because David Moore clearly can't hear us. We need to be sending our mics in both program 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if you would, EA, put us in program 1, 2, 3, and 4 on our mic side, and he should be able to put us in there. All right, let's go ahead and try it just one more time here. Let's pop up David Moore live from FedEx Field. David, do you read us? This has worked before. Let's see if it can work again. Hello, David.
Okay. Hey, yes. Hello.
All right. Yes, we are now in the proper thing is punched in here in Production Room 3. Thank you for joining us for Cowboys Countdown to Kickoff. So, we got the inactives earlier today. I guess no real surprises with Biotish and LVE. What's our situation, as we were talking just a moment ago, about Connor McGovern? He came down with some illness late in the week. Is he going to be the starting center this afternoon?
Well, my understanding, if he wasn't, you would have seen him on this inactive list. So
okay.
They will go with him. How long he goes, we'll see. I was told the other day he was under the weather, but the plan was still for him to go out there. And they want to, this game is about working some scenarios in the offensive line and also in that corner spot opposite Trayvon Diggs to get a little bit better feel, a little bit better trust. A little bit more base under you going into the postseason if you need to use these configurations again going forward.
You mentioned the secondary, and very late in the week they add Xavier Rhodes. What's the potential of him playing when?
Well, this is a guy you add, put on the practice squad, see where he is. Certainly he's not going today. I would not anticipate next week. But they want some veteran experience there in case they start getting picked at in some of these postseason games. Maybe the best way to stop the bleeding is with a guy who has a pedigree in the league, a veteran who has the experience and maybe isn't what he was physically, but through experience and through some other things can give you a few snaps over the course of a game. So they just want to get him in here, see where he is. The fact he has been on other teams this year, at least they know from a conditioning standpoint, he should be in pretty good shape. So just get him in the building. You have 3 really veteran corners now behind Nashawn Wright and Deron Bland that you can turn to if you need to in a desperate situation. So I think they feel, at least from an insurance standpoint and an experience standpoint, they feel as good as they can about this secondary going into the postseason, given that they lost 2 key contributors in Lewis, in Jordan Lewis and also Anthony Brown.
It's not a surprise that this defense really seemed to struggle once they lost Brown. Even if you go back to the Green Bay game when he was hurt, he played like the first 20 snaps of that game. Then he missed the rest of it, and that's when Green Bay had a lot of their success on the offensive side of the ball. He comes back, defense seems to fix their flaws, and then he goes away. Has it partially been because Dallas is kind of overprotected maybe their defensive backs a little bit and been, I guess, less aggressive with their defensive front as a result?
Well, I think that's some of that. Some of that is the style of teams they played. But Anthony Brown, and this was a pretty significant theme in training camp as well. You talk to the coaching staff, and usually all of them, when you asked about players who were under the radar and maybe didn't get the appreciation they deserved, almost all of them pointed to Anthony Brown and how he stood up at that corner opposite of Diggs and really in a lot of ways were strong enough where they went, well, we just can't pick on him. Let's just keep going on Diggs' side. Where Diggs had that season that you hadn't seen in 40 years in the NFL from an interception standpoint. So they just felt he was, in some ways, maybe an overachiever, a guy who you just don't talk about much, but it's just so solid game in and game out that they didn't have to worry about some things in protection and coverage and maybe some of these sluggo routes that you've seen the corners on that side be burned with now. Did you see that happen with Anthony Brown? No. And they still felt as solid as he was. He still had enough speed to recover when he was out of position. And you take those two elements out, they've been working through it back there. And they're not as good in the secondary as they were for the last year and a half when he was in there, that's for sure.
David Moore joining us live from FedEx Field here on Cowboys Countdown to Kickoff ahead of Dallas and the Commanders. So Sam Howell's making his first career start today. Obviously, he has a lot of arm talent. Washington doesn't have anything to play for, but will he be throwing to the regular complement of Commanders receivers today in McLaurin and Dotson and et cetera?
Well, it does appear so, although it's interesting, Brian Robinson, who's been their really lead rusher since coming back since the shooting, he is inactive for this game, which surprises me a little bit. I thought he was going to go. So, I would anticipate he would still throw, but again, this is interesting. When you're looking at it from a Dallas perspective, it's also about getting ready for the postseason too, right? And now we'll see how this unfolds today, but the most likely scenario is you open on the road against Tom Brady, and we were just talking about the cornerback position and how does Dallas prepare for this potential meeting with Tom Brady. They go against Gardner Minshew, Joshua Dobbs, and Sam Howell. I'm not sure that's exactly a murderer's row of quarterbacks.
Slightly different caliber than number 12. just a little bit off.
What you're about to face. Yeah.
I saw you tweet last night, and you probably have better sources than any of us. Will that be a Monday Night Football game? Just the idea of Cowboys being a marquee franchise against Tom Brady? Is that where we're going?
Well, I've gotten this pretty consistently from people over the last 2 to 3 days that we'll see how it plays out here. But people, and these aren't just people in the organization too. These are people at the network, people who work with the network. Basically, everyone's operating under the premise that if this holds and Dallas comes out of today as the number 5 seed, that the Monday night game would be Dallas and Tampa Bay. And if you remember, last year was the first of Monday night, and what did you have there? You had the Rams play the Cardinals, both of those 4 and 5 matchups. So this would be another 4 and 5 matchup. This kind of fits the template of what you saw last year. And again, I was interested because so many people, their initial reaction was, there's no way in the world this is going to happen. It's just not. I hear pretty consistently, and I have for the last, I would say, 72 hours, that if this holds the way it is, that Dallas and Tampa Bay Monday night, the most likely scenario at the moment.
So, David, I want to talk about the Dak interceptions. We know that they've been an issue for this team, but I think they're definitely more of a team issue than they are just a Dak issue. But I think one of your colleagues, Michael Gelkin, had an article about how 7 of the interceptions are on Dak and 7 are on his teammates. But I want to take it a step further. 7 of his interceptions have also happened with about 3 minutes and 30 seconds or less left in the second quarter. So almost like in these no-huddle situations. Is that something that Dallas needs to be? I mean, to me, that's pretty concerning. That kind of does signify a team that maybe is trying to do too much in those situations.
Yes, I agree completely. And let's take this from a little bit different perspective. Let's go back earlier in the season when Cooper Rush was the quarterback, and they went 4-1 without Dak. Never scored more than 24 points in a game. But what were we lauding Cooper Rush for?
Protecting the ball.
He always responded, protecting the ball and responding in key moments. If the other side did something, he would respond with a drive to get the lead back. If the defense did something, that was when he responded. It's also about the timing of. It's not just whether you have a turnover or not. It's about the timing and how often do we hear Mike McCarthy talk about situational football? What you're talking about is situational football.
Right.
So I agree with you completely. You look at that and you say, well, wait a minute. An inordinate amount of these turnovers are coming in this situation. We shouldn't put ourselves in this position right here. We need to approach this differently. And it's not just the turnovers themselves, it's the timing of them and what it does and what it means at that moment of the game. And look, all of these aren't on Dak. We know that, and you can go through and you can break it down. But a lot of these are still decisions on Dak Prescott's part to be aggressive in a situation where I think it's realistic to step back and ask, is this a situation that you needed to be as aggressive as you were right there?
Right.
So it's, you look at it, you break it down strategically and well, and just as far as your overall team philosophical approach. And to me, that goes to the coaching staff and to Dak. It's like, okay, so many of these turnovers are in this time frame. What aren't we doing here? Are we pushing it too much? Are we just trying to force something to happen? And you need to look at that and go in their self-scout and go, well, wait, this is where we can cut down right here on a percentage. And now suddenly maybe this isn't an issue anymore.
Yeah, and for example, Kevin Byard is one of the best safeties in football, and he's defending one-on-one against Dalton Schultz. Maybe that's a matchup you want to steer away from because I think that favors the safety in that position. No matter how much you trust Schultz or think he's a good player, to me, there's a better matchup in other positions of the field, and I feel like a lot of times Dallas gets their number one receiver on a number 3 corner and their number 3 receiver on a number 1 corner and goes to the number 3 receiver versus the number 1 corner, not necessarily where the other 31 teams in the NFL would go.
Yeah, and on your example there, if that is something where you're trailing at the end of the game and you still trust Schultz to make that play even though he's on Baird, you know what? You do it and you don't look back.
Fine.
Mm-hmm. But do you really need to do it in the situation you just described?
Yeah.
And that's what I think. That's where I think there needs to be a little bit more discernment on how they look at these situational.
Yeah, what were they up 10-0 there?
Yes. So what was the upside?
Right.
If you don't, the worst scenario was what happened. But you don't get a touchdown there, but you still get a field goal, and then you still have a lead, and you're still dictating how the game is played out. It's completely different. So the risk-reward quotient to me has not been propositional, I guess you will. Has not been conditional to where you are. It's not a proportional response a lot of times. I would argue that interception to Schultz was not a proportional response for where you were in the game.
Right.
David Moore live from FedEx Field. Cowboys taking on the Commanders this afternoon at 3:25. Obviously, the Dak interceptions and the turnovers are a concern. One thing that has been cleaned up nicely is the lack of penalties. I forgot who wrote the article in your publication there, David, but the Cowboys' offense has only committed 1 penalty in 5 consecutive games, and that's a far cry from what we saw as far as the discipline and penalty issue they had last year in 2021.
Yeah, they're doing a lot better at the end, and they have addressed from where they were earlier. And here's the other element of it, and these are still going down, even though you're shuffling in the offensive line that you hoped you wouldn't do, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you're moving some different bodies in and out of there, and you're still keeping the penalties down, which I think is a pretty strong sign that they're going about this the right way.
Also, as far as how things play out today, I mean, Davis Webb is starting for the Giants. It doesn't feel like New York is going to play many of their regulars against Philadelphia, while the Eagles are bringing back Jalen Hurts from injury. If things get out of hand relatively quickly in today between the Giants and Eagles, could you see a matriculation of guys coming out, or will Mike McCarthy go mass exodus and do total line changes as far as backups go?
I don't think it'll be a mass exodus. I think he would. Now, I do believe he would probably accelerate his substitution plan if his first half unfolds and there's nothing to play for there. Mm-hmm. But again. I would be surprised if that happens much before the second half because there's still, and again, it's an unlikely scenario, right? But this Dallas team opening at home is much different than being forced to go through the NFC on the road the entire time to get to where they want to go.
Right.
So you cannot minimize or play with that possibility while it is still on the table, and I don't think Dallas will. But you have to respond to the situation, right? And I believe, I guess if it's 21-0 early in that game, you may start going, okay, let's get Micah Parsons out of there. He doesn't need to play again tonight. Let's just go with what we talked about doing here. So,
hey, real quick on Parsons, David, is he still wearing the club this week like he had against Tennessee?
He said this week he was not going to wear it this week. Okay. That it was that his hand was cut, but he feels he's far enough past it where he does not need to wear the club this week.
Well, it's that time, David, and I know that everybody unanimously in the morning news picked the Cowboys this week. It's a weird circumstance, and I even feel bad asking you for a prediction, but that's what we do this time every week here on Countdown to Kickoff. What is it?
Yeah, especially these games because I think there's so many unknowns. What happens early in a game really dictates what the score is going to be because it dictates how you proceed the rest of the way.
Right.
But let's not even go through that. Let's just say Dallas 27-13 and leave it at that and get to the postseason.
All right. Well, David, we appreciate the time. Thank you for joining us here on the internet as we are streaming on Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube. So we'll hear you on the airwaves tomorrow, I'm assuming with the Musers.
Great. Look forward to it. Thanks so much,
All right,
guys.
David. Take care. There
See
he
you,
goes.
David
Moore live from FedEx Field ahead of Cowboys v. Commanders. By the way, just a few notes. Dallas 10-1 against the NFC East over the past 2 years. Dak, I had the note written down. I forgot it. I think he's 7-1 or maybe 8-1 all time against Washington, and I think his only loss came in his rookie year in Washington. So he's had a good measure of success. And by the way, with a win today, that's 13 wins, which might not even win you the division, but the other 13-win seasons for the Cowboys, 1992, that went exceedingly well. But the other ones, 2007 and 2016, which we all very vividly remember, a flame out against the Giants, and then, of course, the
great game against the Packers.
Did Dez catch it or not? That's a question that will always bedevil
What
the
year
Cowboys.
was the second one? 2016?
7 and 16 were the other 13 wins.
So 16 was the home game that they lost. That
Yes,
was the Aaron Rodgers.
was that
like 30 seconds left, and he throws on the sideline to the tight end.
Was that 16?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, because what it was
Romo was earlier.
14 or 14, that's right. Well, it all kind of leads together.
Packers
a lack of playoff success will do that to a franchise.
13-3, 12-4.
Real quick, do want to thank the good P1s and our friends at Desperado's Mexican Restaurant for feeding us. We don't have a menu, but rest assured it's going to be delicious. They've been feeding us here on the pre- and post-game show the past 11 years. They've done it again today. They've got 2 locations you need to check out. The Morning News has rated them as some of the best Tex-Mex you're going to get in the whole area. One in Dallas off University and Greenville, the other one in Garland off Campbell and Jupiter. Top shelf margaritas. We're talking fajitas. We're talking tamales. You name it. The greatness and the good P1s at Desperado's Mexican Restaurant. All right, coming up next, we'll take a quick pause. Stick with us. We'll give you our final thoughts as we get you closer to Cowboys and Commanders in Landover.
It's another high-flying Maverick season on the ticket. Jake Hidd and Luka are ready to make another deep playoff run this season, and we're there for every triple-double along the way. Listen to the voice of the Mavericks, Mark Followell, and our hero of the hardwood, Justin Montemayor, and Mavs insider Brian Damaris for instant hot hoops opinions on our Dallas Mavericks postgame show after every home game. Plus, Followell talks to the hardline every Thursday afternoon at 4:10 on Sports Radio 96.7 and 1310 The Ticket. This is Cowboys Countdown to Kickoff Hot sports opinions on the Cowboys from Sean Bass, David Newbury, and the Ticket Guys. Brought to you by Miller Lite and Sports Radio 96.7 and 1310, The Ticket.
We've got to win. The focus first and foremost is win, play well, yes, and build momentum. And if we win the division title, that's not necessarily up to us at this point. We've just got to go win and take care of our business. But yeah, that would be great. I mean, you don't play the game checking up every quarter to see what that other score is. You got to play and, as I always say, be where your feet are, and being focused and just making sure that we're, as I've said, stacking good things and clean up things from last week and be better this week to make sure that we're hitting this thing full stride.
Quarterback Dak Prescott, the voice you just heard here on Cowboys Countdown to Kickoff. Be where your feet are. I guess that's the best. That's good advice just at any time in life, really.
That does sound like a quarterback saying, because
it sure does.
They also say, let your feet lead you your throw, meaning like if your feet will tell you where to go. If your feet are out of rhythm, don't throw it, because that means you're late.
Hopefully the Cowboys quarterback's feet are in rhythm today. That means the offensive line with Connor McGovern at center today is doing their job. But interesting game today for the Cowboys at 12-4. Still things on the line. Still the 1 seed is still hanging out there. But before we get to our final thoughts and our final segment here, we do need to talk about the playoff picture going on in the league. Today the AFC was the first course of our big meal today for the NFL. And
the appetizer?
Yeah, that's kind of the appetizer before the main dish here in the NFC. And the Bills took care of the Patriots 35-23. And just the emotions today in Orchard Park for them to pay tribute as they did to DeMar Hamlin right off the top, and then immediately get a touchdown return in the opening kick was just
place was rocking.
There were chills. And I'm not gonna lie, I got a little misty as I watched that and it's been so cool, as we said, to see the whole league. Wear the 3 shirts. In fact, on the 30-yard line of every stadium, 3 has been outlined in red just to pay some tribute to DeMar Hamlin, who is doing much, much better, which is awesome.
Yeah, that is amazing. I loved hearing the doctor's note when he woke up and he wrote down who won, and the doctor said, "You did."
Yeah,
like
you did,
that is true.
Yeah.
Because I mean, football's amazing. If you've ever had an opportunity to be close to the NFL level, like on the field level, and you see the size of the guys and you see how hard and how fast they hit on every single play, then you understand what they put their bodies through week in and week out. And Sean, sometimes I'm just amazed that we don't have more events like this, because it is such a brutal sport.
And the play that happened with T. Higgins was just,
it was a very regular
it felt
play.
very normal. It's just hit him at the exact precise spot for that whole
at the
thing to
right
happen.
time.
Yeah, it was just insane. But hey, I'm glad DeMar Hamlin's doing much better.
Amen.
And so the Patriots lost today, and that opened things up for the Steelers, because the Steelers took care of business against the Browns 28-14. They were able to win that one. Yeah, Mike Tomlin over 500. But sadly for Pittsburgh fans, the Steelers are not headed to the postseason, because if the Patriots lost, all the Dolphins had to do is beat Joe Flacco and the Jets, a Jets team that was already eliminated. And I don't know if this is a scoregami, but it might be, as the Jets were able, the Dolphins were able to win at home today at Hard Rock, 11-6. They kicked a field goal pretty late. They got a late safety, obviously, in this one to win by a 5-point margin. But Skylar Thompson, the former Kansas State quarterback,
got it done
today against a Jets team that still has a very good defense.
Man, the Dolphins, they're going to make the playoffs, and they have some serious questions about what they're going to do at the quarterback position.
Okay, real quick, why was there even reports of them potentially firing their head coach, Mike Macdonald, who, by all accounts, is very well liked in the room, liked by his quarterback, and had them in a very good position earlier this year?
I have no idea.
It's so weird.
It is very weird, because, yes, they have limped to the finish line, but that is not, to me, on him. I mean, they've gone against good opponents, and they've had some injury issues, and yeah, that felt very Jim Irsay-ish if he would have fired him after that, just impulsive. And I don't know.
Isn't their owner suspended right now?
Yeah, Stephen Ross.
I'm sure he's probably still, pulling strings behind the scenes. But yeah, that felt really odd for that to be floated out this week. Also today,
but what are they going to do at quarterback with Tua?
That's
3 concussions.
Will
this
he
year.
continue his career? I don't know. That's a giant question mark. Meaningless games today. The Falcons beat the Buccaneers 30-17. Brady did start this game, but they pulled him out. Kyle Trask was playing in the first half.
So as bad as Brady has been this year, and I say bad, like the Bucs have been
Brady
pretty
bad.
bad. Yeah, like still second in the NFL in most passing yards.
Yeah.
That just doesn't sound right, but he's at 4,600.
Well, and the one guy that leads Earth in passing yards, Patrick Mahomes.
My Lord.
And yesterday, the Chiefs took care of business, secured home field in the AFC with a 31-13 road win over a Vegas team that didn't have much
Do you
to
think
play
they're good,
for.
the Chiefs? I think they're pretty good.
I think they're pretty good. And he has, over 5,200 yards this season?
5,250.
I mean, that's your MVP right there. And
600 more yards than Brady.
it's as much as you get tired of maybe some of the usual suspects being in the MVP conversation, it's undeniable what Patrick Mahomes did. And by the way,
lost Tyreek Hill.
yes, losing Tyreek Hill, and I understand that his average pass isn't as long as it has been in the past. In fact, I think 7 yards per completion or 7 yards per attempt. It doesn't matter. They know how to scheme people open. And by the way, speaking of scheme, did you see the incredible ring around the rosy formation?
The snow globe play.
Is that what that's what they're calling it?
it.
It was awesome, and of course it results in a touchdown because that's what Andy Reid does. Other meaningless games: the Panthers were able to pick up a win today over the Saints by a score of 10-7 in a game that I'm guessing people in New Orleans and Carolina probably didn't want to watch. The Vikings took care of business against the Bears at Soldier Field, 29-13. So Minnesota heads into the postseason at 13-4, and I don't know about you. I kind of feel like people are sleeping on Minnesota heading into the playoffs, and I think a lot of that has to do with just the general poor opinion of Kirk Cousins.
Well, to me, it has to do with the thumping they received by Dallas and Green Bay. So, yes, I do think that people are too quick to write off what happened in Buffalo because that, to me, was a tremendous win. An unlikely win, yes. And they were blown out, and I think their point differential, they have a negative points differential, which is always a red flag. But
there's a ton of weapons there, though.
The thing is that
they'll have a home game.
Going to Minnesota during the playoffs is going to be tough.
I've been to Minnesota for the Romo game up there when Favre was quarterbacking the Vikings, a 30-3 beatdown of Dallas. That was one of the loudest environments I've ever been in my life.
Case Keenum to Rice on.
Oh. The Minneapolis Miracle.
Right.
Yeah, that was bananas.
Yeah, I mean they weren't the favorite in that game. Weren't the Patriots? I mean the Saints one of the better teams that year, and maybe I'm just saying it wrong. But regardless, it's not a place that you want to go.
No, and it's
not
have
to try to play on the road.
The Dome,
so loud.
It used to be loud. The new place is just as loud, and that's one of the nicer stadiums in the NFL.
You got to deal with that horn.
Oh yeah, the horn. So much horn. By the way, 2 minutes to go in Cincinnati. The Bengals are taking care of the Ravens. Right now it is 27-16. The Bengals, of course, maybe the biggest loser. I mean, obviously, bigger things were more. Damar Hamlin's life was more important than seeding and whatnot. But Cincinnati is kind of got jobbed a little bit as far as like potentially having a home game or home field moving forward. Heck, one game might be decided due to a coin toss. I think if they meet Baltimore in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it's going to work out yet. I mean, it's just so crazy that. Yeah, you're right. I mean, they were winning that game. They had the ball, but there was still so much football left to be played. You just don't know how it was going to play out. But they took care of business today, and Baltimore is going to be a tough wild card team for someone to deal with, especially if Lamar Jackson's playing. But
absolutely,
I feel like the Ravens have they haven't had I don't believe they've had a touchdown pass to a wide receiver since week 3 this year.
Wow. I mean, I know Andrews is their big target in the red zone, but
Rashard Bateman was their big draft pick that they had, and he's been injured, and so they just don't have a lot of weapons right now.
Also, the Texans top the Colts 32-31, so Houston 3-13-1, and they end on a positive note. As far as the 325 games go, the Seahawks have a lot to play for at home against the Rams today.
Texans won?
Yeah, the Texans won today.
Bears have the number 1 pick.
So the Bears do have the number 1 pick. So what do they do?
Trade?
Yeah, trade. You got if they believe in Justin Fields, you absolutely trade. Chargers-Broncos doesn't have much meaning today, and tonight you have the Packers and Lions, and if the Packers win, they are in as they take on the Lions in Lambeau.
That's a dangerous team.
And the Lions still have life, so I'm very curious, and of course you can hear that game right here on the ticket as we air all the NFL games. And let's see, final thoughts heading into this one. This hour has flown by. Thank you P1s for finding us and tuning in. Thanks to EA on the board. Thanks to Joe Lecce. Thanks to David Moore and Desperado. So a couple minutes left. What's our final thoughts heading into Cowboys-Commanders?
Get in, get out. Just play clean. Do what you have to do. Try to keep a rhythm so there's no rust going into the playoffs next week. But literally just keep number 4 upright.
Yep.
Get 88 out of there. Just
if you can be
and
smart,
11.
Be smart and finish all at the same time.
Right.
Finish strong. That would be great. I've got Dallas winning 30-13 because I'm not a big believer in Sam Howell. But I think that there might be a time or two where you look up and go, okay, this guy might have something. Because I was a big fan of his coming out of
Get
North
ready
Carolina.
for his legs. He can run. He's an athlete.
He is. All right, so halftime, you're going to see myself and Donovan right back here giving you halftime HSOs. And we got the professor, Craig Jr. Miller, going to be joining Jake and Donovan for the postgame show. So that hour went by pretty quick, didn't
Sure
it,
did.
David? All right,
Go Stars.
Yeah, go Stars. Stars taking on the Panthers right now on the airwaves. So Owen and Bruce will have the postgame. Then, of course, you'll have the postgame after Cowboys and Commanders. So thank you for tuning in the regular season. The next time we talk to you on Cowboys Countdown to Kickoff.